My name's Tatiana Hargreaves, and I play the fiddle.
I'm Allison de Groot, and I play clawhammer banjo, and we play in a duo together.
I usually try to avoid answering the question of what is old-time music, because I don't think it's one thing, and I think it's changed over time. And I personally feel like I don't fit into one definition either. I also play bluegrass fiddle, and I feel like I'm somewhere in between these like stricter genre categories. So I usually prefer to say I play like string band music, or I play fiddle banjo music, or I tend to avoid using the term old time because I don't feel like it truly reflects where I sit in between different genres. I think old time music, well, it can mean a lot of different things. I generally think of a string band formation of some sort. So having the banjo and fiddle kind of in the center of it all. That's how I think about it. And it's very community oriented. I think that's really why I play music, is to be a part of the community. And the old time music community to me is why I keep playing. Even when I get tired of it sometimes, but the community always brings me back.
I think old time music has such a wide definition. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and my great uncle played fiddle, and he said he was an old time fiddler. And what that meant for him was playing at dances and playing with friends in people's houses. And so that would be kind of maybe defined as Canadian old time fiddle, and that would be a certain repertoire. So it's definitely, my experience playing old time was very different than his. I've traveled a lot to the U.S. and played a lot in North Carolina and West Virginia. So it seems to me like it's just really regional, and it's sort of just about the group of people that play music together.
Growing up in Oregon, the old time fiddlers contest was just Texas style. And so coming out east, and the definition of old time music out here is also so different, because the Oregon Old Times Fiddler Contest it's like not at all what old time music is out here. So I like what you said about like the regional differences. Like it is a very regional definition that changes depending on where you are. I think a lot of times in dominant narratives about old-time music, historically you see the focus always on men, always on white musicians. And even though that wasn't the only group of people playing, that's the narrative we've been told. And so documenting counter narratives is really important, especially for future generations, so they can see that we have always been here, and that's not anything new. Like, it's just being documented more. So I think it's important to always remember that we are part of this lineage. And now that we're more vocal about it, it seems like it's something new, but it's always been here. So I think documenting that is important.
Yeah, I think I've found that when I first got into old time music, what was the most easily accessible was a lot of white male musicians, but like digging just even a little bit, I think I was kind of surprised at that it is, there is a lot of stuff to access. And I think just like making that stuff more accessible to people, especially who are like just getting into the music as well, and making sure that people kind of know what's up there, and sharing recordings and stories is important.
There are so many women musicians who have come before us that it's hard to name people because there's just so many of them. I mean, the first three people that come to mind for me are Alice Gerard and Judy Hyman and Laurie Lewis. And the three of them have been really important mentor figures for me. So they're kind of the first three that come to mind as far as people that I've gotten to work with and learn from. But thinking about like kind of older generations that I haven't gotten the privilege to meet or work with, I love the fiddling of Emma Lee Dickerson. I love Lily Mae Ledford. I love Rose Maddox. There's so many. There's just too many to name. Emma Lee Dickerson was a fiddler from Eastern Kentucky, and her fiddle style is really, it's really driving. You can hear in the recordings of her that it's a little bit quieter than like Lily Mae Ledford, who's like, her playing is like just so loud and powerful. Emily Dickerson's playing is a little bit more laid back, and she also flat picks guitar, which I think is really cool. I just feel really drawn to her playing because it feels really like introspective, and also I've seen one photo of her and we kind of look alike, so I thought that was cool. Well, so I grew up playing Texas style fiddle, and I also took classical lessons. And what drew me to old time music was how focused it was on playing together, and not having to take a solo or have to show off. It felt very much about playing together. And I also just felt so much more welcomed by the old time music community than like some of the bluegrass community in Oregon has been great to me as well, but I think there was way more women playing old time music than bluegrass music. So it felt like, oh, this is like a place I can exist and be comfortable and be with peers that are like myself. And I never felt that with other genres when I was kind of first getting started.
Well, when I first got into the banjo, Abigail Washburn was a huge influence. I got the Uncle Earl, her solo CD, and also the Uncle Earl CD, and I got to see them at the Winnipeg Folk Festival. So that was really inspiring. Also, Kathy Fink's banjo playing. Kathy taught my banjo teacher, Daniel Kulak, in Winnipeg, and I listened to a lot of her albums as well. And then some musicians that have passed. Matoki Slaughter is absolutely one of my favorite all-time banjo players. And there's some really wonderful videos with Matoki Slaughter and Alice Gerard that we've both been really inspired by as well. So one more banjo player is also Maggie Hammonds Parker as well. And been over the past couple of years learned some of her repertoire on the banjo, and that's been really great as well. And I think what drew me to old time music was I think first just the sound of the banjo, hearing the energy of the banjo. And I still remember the moment that I first heard clawhammer, and I just couldn't figure out what was making all those sounds, and knew that I really wanted to try and figure out what was going on. And then I think the community aspect of it as well, like starting to go to some festivals in the US and traveling down to Cliff Top and getting to play it in a community setting. I think it was just the energy of it that was pretty addicting. I mean, I would travel many, many miles just to have that feeling, and kind of since then tried to revolve my life around being around people to share that with.
something that's kind of crazy about playing this kind of music is you get to meet your heroes a lot of the times. So I'm just thinking about when we did a show with Alice Gerard in Carborough, like, when was that?
2018, probably.
I don't know. And it was the three of us, and we had been working up this, like, some Matilki Slaughter tunes, and getting to just, like, play this repertoire with Alice was really fun, and work up a lot of Alice's originals as well. And we do a version of Beaufort County Jail, and we got to do that with Alice. And that just felt pretty special to get to, after having been so influenced by her music, get to actually play it with her. So
also on our last album, we recorded one of Judy Hyman's tunes as well, and it was really nice to get to share the music with Alice and with Judy too. Stuff that we've recorded and been so inspired by their music.
The repertoire that we play together as a duo comes from either community settings where we've learned repertoire together, or from recordings of musicians whose music we love. And I think we got a lot of inspiration from kind of that reaching down and feeling grounded in the traditional roles of banjo and fiddle. I think that kind of like interlocking sound. But then when we play together, it just feels so free to play together. So I feel like we're learning a lot of this like repertoire, and like I feel like we bonded originally from like just playing, just like jamming for hours with the two of us. But I think the banjo fiddle repertoire has really shaped what we do. And now that we're kind of playing some of more original music, I think that's still very much shaped by our time just like playing at festivals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like we have so much in common with the types of sounds like within old time music that we both really enjoy, but then also outside of old time music, I think a lot of that lines up, and just exploring our instruments in like other settings as well. That kind of feels, I've never had that with somebody else, where there's so much overlap with just the types of sounds and textures and the roles of each instrument, and just kind of being really playful with that, but also feeling really grounded together.
I think for a long time, I tried to keep all these different genres that I played separate. So like I played Texas fiddle, I played classical, thought I was like going to play Scottish music for a little bit, and then playing old time music. And I think it was like Lori Lewis hired me for a bluegrass gig. And I was like, Lori, I don't play bluegrass fiddle. Like, and she's like, well, you will by the time this show happens. And that kind of made me realize that I could do other things. And then as I started to do that more, I realized that, like all of my skills from playing Texas style fiddle and classical and old time, like those can all align and help me when I'm trying to learn how to play bluegrass fiddle. And then also I think being in college and having like playing in different musical situations that had nothing to do with old time music. I think I got way more comfortable like doing improvisation and like kind of interacting on a more like free improv level. I think that really opened up my playing a lot. And then that's like when we started playing together. I think when I was in that really exploratory phase.
Yeah.
So I feel like that translated into our duo.
And then for me, like being from Winnipeg, where there wasn't an active old time scene, I really had to just fit into whatever scenario would have clawhammer banjo. So, yeah.
Well, I do think part of what makes our duo feel really special to me is because we both like love just raging tunes all night long. So we have that like kind of like hyper energy together, but then we also both are like in and out of kind of like the more like progressive bluegrass world where there's a lot more kind of like free improvisation. And so we're used to navigating both of those worlds. And then when we play together, it feels like really freeing because we can just like play a tune and like play it super hard. But then like there's this kind of like openness.
I think another thing for our duo is that it's definitely not a conscious thing to try to change anything about old time music. It's just really, I think, our experiences as musicians from where we grew up, from the people that we learned with, and being in settings to explore our instruments. And then just using all those experiences together to connect and react. So it definitely doesn't feel like there's some agenda for our music. It's just more, the sounds that we like to make.
Yeah, I like that. We're just playing us. Sometimes when we teach workshops together, there's this moment at the beginning where we have to convince the men in our mostly, older men that are older than us. We have to convince them that they have something to learn from us, basically. And there's this kind of like, we kind of have to set ourselves up in this weird like power play, because I feel like if we don't do that, then people just won't listen to us.
Actually, that's true. I feel like teaching is a very different space than performing. Tatiana and I do a lot of teaching together, and it's definitely, I find it being in a performance space and a teaching space can feel different. And yeah, we've definitely come across challenges teaching together, and sort of establishing, I think, the relationship sometimes with people in the class.
Yeah, a lot of times, especially with men in the class who are often older than us, like there's this dynamic where we kind of feel like we have to prove ourselves to our students to make it seem like they seem skeptical that they have something to learn from us.
But they did sign up for the class.
Yeah, that always blows my mind. It's when people sign up for your class, but then they're kind of sitting there like, what do you have to offer? It's like, well, if you don't want to learn from me, then don't sign up for my class. Like, you think that I like what you said about performing is different because when you're on the stage, you're already on the stage and people have to listen to you. But in the classroom, it's more interactive, which I love. I love teaching, and we teach separately and together, but you kind of have to assert yourself in a certain way. And I've found that there are parts of my personality that have developed as a result from being in male dominated spaces. So I think I can be and I've learned this from like watching other women have to navigate these spaces. Like you have to be kind of dominating to be heard. And I don't really like being that way, but I've learned to be that way. Because if I'm not like that, I'll get passed over in the jam session or people won't even notice me. So it's like I have to make myself big to be noticed, and I hate that. But it's been a necessity, and I think I'm realizing I don't have to do it as much now as I used to. But it's hard to unlearn that. So it's kind of shaped a lot of my like communication habits, is having to make myself so big all the time.
You don't have to.
I don't like, it's funny. I just like, I don't really think about like when I'm performing, and even if it is, I don't know, teaching is totally different, but in the performance,
I'm talking about like jam settings, like social setting.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking about. Performing is different because you already have the power. You're on stage, but in the jams and the social setting, that's kind of what I was talking about.
Yeah, I think what you said is great.
there are a couple of reasons why a lot of the common narratives have been told through male perspectives. I think a big one is like families. Like if you're a mom and you have a lot of kids, especially like, thinking about women who are having like 12 kids, like even if they were playing in the house, like they couldn't leave and play music professionally. Like they were had to raise 12 kids or, however many kids while the husband was away at work. I feel like that's a big reason. And I was reading a something from Etta Baker the other day, and she talks about that, how she couldn't play music professionally when and then she eventually did later in her life. But I felt like that was like a very remember that we were reading that together. It was like a very explicit. I don't think that's often talked about explicitly with women musicians, how much being a mom affects your ability to get out and play music publicly. It's more of a private thing. And you hear from a lot of famous male musicians like Bill Monroe or Ralph Stanley, like their mothers were huge influences on their musical life. But because they were mom, they didn't do it publicly or career or wise.
Mm-hmm. I think that is still a big challenge too. I think it's a lot more common for men to continue touring when families have a kid than it is for female musicians too. So I think that the landscape has changed, but I think there's still a lot of challenges for women musicians who have families too. I play old time music because I love the personal connections. You can have played music with somebody for years and go to have a conversation and realize you actually don't know them that much about them, but you also feel really close to them and you feel a really strong connection. So yeah, to me, that's one of the most special things about playing music is just building these really, really strong connections with people. Yeah.
I would agree with that. As far as why old time music matters, it has, I think, informed me more than anything else about how to navigate understanding the history of the United States. And I think it gives me context for all of the things that are happening in the world today. I think learning history through the lens of old time music has given me a perspective that it helps me figure things out sometimes. Like if I'm learning a tune, I can learn so many things just through like where does this tune come from? Who played this tune? Like there's so many things you can learn just through one tune. And then when you're in a community with people that are from very different backgrounds, you also learn about how to communicate with people who come from a different place than you, and how to navigate like really difficult topics within a community. And, the whole country, the whole world are having these conversations. But when you're within this tight-knit community, I think there's a different way of approaching it because it is so community-centered. And it's really hard. But for me, I think playing this music gives me a way to do that. Future of old time music is queer AF. I think it's really exciting what is happening now within the old time community. I also am excited that old time and bluegrass music, I feel like there's a lot of people who are connecting those more I like the term genre queerness, getting away from that binary thinking. And I also am so excited. There's so many more openly queer musicians playing old time music. There was going to be the first ever queer and trans old time gathering before COVID, and it had to get canceled, but that there's enough people that are so excited about playing this music. That feels really exciting to me. It feels like I found like a place where I can just be myself. And I don't think it was that way when I was growing up. I mean, that wasn't even that long ago. But even within the last like 5-6 years, I think there's been a lot of changes. And so that's really exciting to me. And like having students, I teach a lot, and seeing a lot of my students who are so much more aware than I was when I was like 7 years old or whatever. So that's exciting, I think, to me.
I don't know if this is just like my experience, but I feel like for so long there was this idea of like really just like pushing things forward and being like so innovative and like more commercial with it, and that feels like it's like disappearing a little bit. I don't know. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, I do feel like there's more of I don't know.
Like
I
feel like there's like more, like I feel like people, like there's like more value placed on people who aren't necessarily like it's kind of, there's like the names that people know in the old time scene that are like just more active, realistically, like they're active, they're like more putting themselves out there. But I feel like it feels like there's like more space for people who do it like semi-professionally, or like I don't know, aren't necessarily in those like certain networks of like getting gigs and stuff.